This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management topics to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at www.thepmpodcast.com or send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello and welcome to episode number 106. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast for the 14th of September 2008. Nice to have you with us. This episode is a few days late because I've been on a week-long business trip. I'm now all relaxed and ready to once again face my colleagues at work. But of course, in the very first meeting that I have to attend today, there is this jerk who every time manages to push my buttons. If there were only a way to deal with this guy. Well, we have all been in this situation on our projects, and luckily there is help just around the corner. And that help comes to you in the form of Margaret Meloni. She has been a regular guest here on the podcast, and because all of us know a jerk or two, or sometimes have been a jerk ourselves, Margaret is going to open up her resource toolkit for us and help us deal with the jerks on our project team. Today's episode is sponsored by Free PMP Exam Questions. If you are preparing for the PMP exam, then you are in training for a 4-hour, 200-question exam. And because practice makes perfect, we offer a series of free exams that are sent to you via email. Over 2,100 people are using this service. Go to freepmexamquestions.com and become one of them. That's freepmexamquestions.com. Yes, very exciting. We once again have 2 winners, and this time the winners are going to receive 1 copy each of Margaret Meloni's PM lecture titled Dealing with Difficult People. This PM lecture is worth $60, and also the winners will receive 2 PDUs. The first winner, his name is Steve Johnson, and he is a listener to the Free Project Management Podcast. And then we also drew a winner from the Premium Podcast listeners, those who are subscribing to our Premium feed, and his name is Gabino Carballo. Probably mispronounced your name totally. I'm very sorry, Gabino. In any case, congratulations to both Steve and Gabino. If you are interested in learning more about the premium podcast subscription, then go to thepmpodcast.com and click on the premium subscription button. And if you'd like to know more about PM lectures, then go to pmlectures.com. We haven't done any helpful resources in quite a while, so I thought it's about time that we bring them back. And today's helpful resources fit fabulously with the topic that we are talking about. And why do they fit so fabulously? Because they are both resources from Margaret Meloni. Margaret writes 2 blogs that I would like to introduce to you today, just briefly. The first one is her main blog, which you can find at blog.melonicoaching.com. And in this blog, she focuses on personal development for project managers in general. It's not just for project managers, but there's a strong project management focus on that. Her second blog is called The Human Side, and that blog is published at ittoolbox.com. And about this blog, she writes this: it takes more than technology to get ahead. It takes people smarts too. Let's explore the human side of technology. This blog will tell stories, ask questions, and start discussions all about our professional behavior and professional relationships. Welcome to the human side. So these are the 2 blogs by Margaret Meloni. Yes, they overlap a little bit, but one is more general and the other one is more on the IT focus on the human side. But they are really fabulous blogs. I really like what Margaret has to say. Can you tell? Can you tell? If you would like to know more about these helpful resources, go to thepmpodcast.com and click on the helpful resources link at the bottom of today's episode, which is episode number 106. And now let's move on to our main interview, which is the discussion with Margaret Meloni on how to control yourself when working with jerks. Margaret started her career as a computer programmer. During her years in information technology, she has had the opportunity to perform different roles and work within multiple industries. She has been successful as a programmer, analyst, business analyst, project manager, program manager, and senior manager. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and an MBA from the California State University in Long Beach. She is also a certified PMP. A constant throughout her career has been her strong communication skills and a passion to see other people at their best in the workplace and beyond. Her work as a business coach truly is her joy in the job. Margaret helps information technology project managers learn how to say, I get to go to work today and not I have to work today. She helps them find the joy in the job. So, without further ado, here's the interview with Margaret Meloni.
The Project Management Podcast's feature interview.
Today, with Margaret Meloni, President of Meloni Coaching Solutions.
Fellow project managers, we are welcomed once again by Margaret Meloni in her beautiful 1927 home here in Long Beach. We're just a few steps away from the Pacific Ocean. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Cornelius. Welcome.
Before we get started, I wanted to mention that you may hear some construction noise going on in the background. Margaret has the painters here, so if you hear some hammering or some paintbrushes, then ignore them and concentrate on the beautiful voice of Margaret Meloni. Now, a little earlier this year, Margaret, I had the good fortune to attend a conference call which you hosted. And this conference call was titled, How to Control Yourself When You Are Working with Jerks. That call was an hour long, and it was, from my point of view at least, the usual outstanding Margaret Meloni quality of content that came across. And when I asked you if you'd like to do a podcast interview on this particular topic, you immediately agreed. So wonderful. Here we are talking about how to control yourself when you are working with jerks. So let's start out with a question then that will bring everyone onto the same page. How do you define the behavior of a jerk?
All right. That's a great question. You know, when you're driving down the street and someone cuts you off, it's pretty clear, isn't it? Right? You want to go, you jerk.
Yes.
When it's at the office, it can be a little more difficult. Now, sometimes when people do things we don't like or say things we don't like or treat us in a way that we don't like, we tend to think about them as a jerk. That may or may not be true, and I think maybe as we move forward, some of our conversation will reveal that. Let's say for now that a jerk at work is somebody who appears to be being disruptive for the sake of being disruptive, or brings, I'll say, difficult personality traits to the job, and it makes it difficult for us to work with them. And sometimes we find ourselves working around them to get the work done, which is a sign, I think. When you're trying to work around someone instead of work with them, there's an issue.
Okay. Now, though it may seem obvious, my question or the answer to my question may seem obvious here. Most listeners work in project environments. So what does the behavior of a jerk do to our projects?
Oh, it can be really damaging. It can be very infectious. And so the project manager is the person who needs to help manage these behaviors on the team and I'll say prevent them as much as possible. The things that we see on project teams are, let's say, the person who takes control of a meeting, and runs away with it and no one else can get a word in edgewise or accomplish the items on the agenda that we set out to accomplish. The person who is sarcastic or snide whenever someone else tries to come up with a new idea or a fresh approach to something. The person who loses their temper when things don't go well and yells. The person who wants to work in secret and won't share with you anything they're doing. I didn't realize what a list I could come up with, but, so there's different kinds of jerks at work and, generally their behavior has a negative impact on the team or else we wouldn't think they were jerks.
Okay. So I realize I have this jerk on my team, negative behavior. I think they're influencing the outcome on my project. Again, very rhetorical question, but I have to ask it to put it out there in the open. What can I do to make these people change their ways? Is there any way that I can influence them?
Influence, maybe. Make me change, control me? No. People change when people want to change. Mm-hmm. Generally, we change when, I'll say, we are faced with a significant life-changing situation. Now, that will vary by person. If you pulled me aside and told me, you were going to stop doing podcasts with me because it was too difficult for you to work with me, that might be enough for me to make changes or to make changes around you. That tends to be rare. We tend to only change for, I'll say, people who have deep, significant meaning to us. And no offense, but a lot of our team members, that isn't the case. It's really our partners outside of work, our family members who maybe bring about significant changes. So I think it's best to approach this with I'm not going to change this person. I'm not going to control them, but I am going to come up with some strategies to help mitigate when this person acts up, for lack of a better term.
Okay, let's take a look at maybe a couple of these strategies that I can employ. Are there general strategies or are there specific strategies for a particular behavior? Like, for instance, you mentioned the person who likes to work in secret on my project. Is there anything I can do to deal with such a jerk? Or does it matter? I mean, the person who yells at me versus the person who likes to work in secret, same strategies in general?
There are some general tips to use, I'll say, when you're confronted with a person right in the middle of their difficult behavior. And I guess I think of these as I'll say survival strategies. So, when you're immediately, and that's because that's what they are, is I'll say, get both of you through the moment and be okay.
Yes.
What we're trying to avoid is some major altercation that's going to impact the ability of the two of you or the group of you to work together forever. And so we don't want to have big blow-ups. We don't want to say things that shouldn't have been said. Anything that's going to damage any person in that scenario permanently, we want to stay away from that. So general tips are about remembering that you want to be the adult professional and that it might be a temporary fix to say, "Ooh, I sure got them," or "I fixed them good," or "He yelled at me, I yelled louder." That's temporary. That's instant gratification. It's not helping anything. If you can try to relax and be calm and, take a deep breath and only speak to somebody in a nice professional manner, not raising your voice and not becoming excited. That's, I'll say, a tip for in the moment. That's a survival strategy. Coming from a place of treating that person with respect, even though they might be driving you nuts, even though they're not treating you with respect, that is another strategy. So anything you can do to diffuse the situation, asking questions. It's hard for people sometimes to remain upset when you ask them questions. So getting to get them to talk about the situation at hand, and you're asking them business questions. You're not asking them like, what makes you such an idiot, or what makes you sarcastic all the time? Because that's only going to...
Sometimes I would like to ask that particular question.
Well, sure.
But in the end, if I hear you right, I mean, this ties nicely into the interview that we did previously with your personal brand. You said you want to come out as the professional, and you don't want to come out as the jerk as well.
Exactly.
So don't react to them. Think of your professional brand again. How do you want others to see you? Because often, if you have a jerk acting up in a meeting, well, there are 6 other people sitting around here, so make sure that you act true to yourself, true to your professional brand, and you'll probably end up on top of this. And now, one other question I just simply have to ask you, because cultural differences. We have listeners from all over the world, and many project managers these days, they lead multicultural teams, cross-country border teams. Can cultural differences lead to fake impressions? That I just think someone's a jerk and they're really not? What can I do? Is it a question of education?
It's a good question. We have differences based on, where we were raised, when we were born, what our family believed in, etc. And yet, I truly believe that you could also take two people who came from maybe the same mountain town in a remote part of China. And they have been in a sheltered, isolated culture and society where everybody pretty much thinks and does a certain thing, and you can still find that they're different people. So where I'm going with this is, and I think I actually wrote a little blog entry on this one time, it goes like this: sometimes a jerk is just a jerk. So I may put my glasses on and assume, okay, so I entered IT. When I entered IT, it's not like I was the first woman, but it still was very male dominated. So when I was younger, anytime I had an altercation with somebody and he was a he, I assumed he was treating me that way because I was a woman. That's not necessarily true, and I understand that, of course, now. Sometimes a jerk is just a jerk. So is this person really behaving differently because of their culture or because of their personality? So before I put a label and say it's because you're a man, or it's because you're from Switzerland and I'm not, or it's because you're from China and I'm not.
Yes, those neutral Swiss jerks, they just get you every time. Yes.
I just thought we should take this moment to talk about that. I just think we should really think about it, because what I don't want to do, I don't want to walk away from the conversation and say, well, all men in IT of a certain age are bliff. All men from Switzerland who do podcasts are a certain way. You see where I'm going is, I don't want us to perpetuate prejudice.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, because that was a very long answer. So do we sometimes have differences because people were raised in different places? Yes. Does that mean we're not going to get along? No.
Okay.
So let's learn about the person and then figure out what's causing the difference.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go back into our office. We're sitting there. We're faced with a jerk, somebody who's just extremely difficult to work with. How can I avoid falling into the trap of just following the provocation and just saying, okay, I'm going to react now? Is counting to 10 enough, or are there any other tips that you may have?
Counting to 10 is not a bad strategy. It's certainly better than a nothing strategy. It does actually take 90 seconds. If you become angry, it takes 90 seconds. There is actually a physiological response that we do experience, that we have anger. It does go through our blood system, so to speak, and it takes 90 seconds for that to dissipate. Okay, now when I tell that to people, they're like, are you crazy? I can't wait 90 seconds for responding.
Yes, people are going to look at you oddly. It's like, what is he doing? Why are you not saying anything?
Yeah, maybe you can, maybe you can't. But somewhere along the way, you have the opportunity to recognize the anger and not to give in to the sheer momentum of it. See, it's easier, right? The course of least resistance is I started out angry. It's easier to stay on that path.
Yes.
What might be better is to stop on that path. So a couple things. It might be okay to look at the person and say, I need a second to respond. I'm experiencing some anger. It's really going to depend on how you feel and how you trust that person, because there's some people you can and cannot say that to. But what you really want to do is you want to step back and remember the end goal, which is to take care of whatever the business issue is at hand. That's why we're at the office together, is for work. It's fun when we have good social situations, and it's not fun when we don't. We're there to accomplish a goal. So, can I talk to you about the business situation? Can I let go the other? Can I come from a place of understanding that your issue is really not about me? It just feels like it's about me because you happen to be in my face at that moment. And the choice you have made to act in a certain way reflects you and is not reflective of me. I need to be the grown-up, the adult professional, and decide what I want my choice to be in this situation. So do I want people to walk out of there and go, woohoo, that Margaret, she sure yelled louder than he did? Or do I want it to become a non-event, and just handle it? I hope that's going along the lines of what you were looking for, or what you're...
Yes.
Okay, good.
But now let's turn this whole situation around. We're always talking about them being the jerks and them treating us badly, because there are moments when, believe it or not, we are going to be the jerk, right?
Think?
Unfortunately. I have no doubt about this, because it has happened to me before. Mm-hmm. And I bet every listener of the podcast has a moment when they can go back to and say, oh my God, how could I have behaved like that at that point? So how can I avoid being a jerk? Is there any way?
Yes, you can. Because what happens is you have that out-of-body experience where you're looking down and you're going, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's me behaving that way. Mm-hmm. And then you walk away later and you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. All right. So if you've already gotten to that point, and it's absolutely okay after the fact to apologize and to advise people that, you feel regret that you behaved in that way and that is not the representation you like for yourself as a professional. Of course, what's better than having to make an apology is to not have had the situation at all. So, the better you get to know yourself and the more you pay attention to what triggers you, what makes you upset, what leads you to behave, and in the other conversation we had, I called it out of brand, the better that you can manage yourself. So you try to understand what are your hot buttons, what brings out your inner jerk, and how can you put yourself in situations to avoid it. And with recognition, we can't control every situation around us. So I can't guarantee that I'm never going to have to be, say, at a meeting at lunchtime, because one of my triggers happens to be hunger. I just share people. I feel like when I'm really hungry, I become just pure evil. But what I can do is have a balance bar with me so that I, don't say and do stupid, horrifying things. What I can do is ask if we can take a break. If I don't have a snack with me, and say, can you just give me a minute so I can go down the hall and get something? Mm-hmm. See, when I know that about myself and I don't create a situation to support myself, I truly believe I'm being irresponsible.
So think ahead of what is the situation that you're going into. What could happen to me? Could I behave like a jerk? How can I avoid being a jerk? I mean, okay, granted, there are moments, there's an unexpected event happening and everyone just reacts and you react along. Those things just happen and there's not much you can do. But I assume in this case here, we're talking about the situation where you can plan ahead and look into the future and go, oh man, there's Susan in the meeting with me and she's always managing to push my buttons. So what am I going to do today so that she is not going to push my buttons? I'm going to apply strategy A today, and thereby I will not be a jerk, and I don't have to be afraid of looking myself into the eyes in the mirror tomorrow morning. Yeah,
and you can go to sleep tonight, you know, at the regular time, not tossing and turning all night.
Yes.
And, remember to give yourself credit when Susan is pushing your buttons. And if, usually you would have fallen for it 4 times out of 4, and this time 3 times out of 4 you combat it, that's darn good progress. Darn good progress.
Yeah.
And what you take away is the lesson learned of what happened the 4th time. Why did it get to you the 4th time? It maybe just means you need more work. on those random situations that come up that you didn't know were triggers for you, then you go away and you do a lesson learned on them. I didn't know I'd behave this way under this situation. Now I know. What do I think caused it? So you need to be introspective and really step outside and say, what makes me do this? What led me to behave in this way? Why did I make that choice? Because it is a choice. Mm-hmm. It's a choice.
Yeah. Got one more question for you, final question coming up. But before we do that, I'd like to take a quick sidestep here because I want to make our listeners aware, of course, that dealing with jerks is just one smaller aspect of a larger topic. And that larger topic is dealing with difficult people. And dealing with difficult people, again, that is the title of a PM lecture that you created and which is available at pmlectures.com. Can you give us an overview of this PM lecture and whom this particular lecture might help?
Absolutely. I believe that this lecture is going to help individuals who are faced with difficult people and situations at work, and maybe they haven't had a chance to think about and apply strategies to these behaviors. So it's a PM lecture. I think this is one I'm going to jump out there and say it's safe for somebody who's not a project manager to listen to. I mean, I think during the lecture we do talk about projects and teams, but I think the concepts that we're applying are helpful to anyone who's faced with different kinds of difficult people or jerks at work.
All right.
Absolutely.
In that case, my final question for you. People aren't jerks all the time. You know, some people are always jerks and some people are just, once or occasionally jerks. And how do we treat these people differently? How do we differentiate here between these two groups? What different strategies do we apply?
I see the difference this way. A person who has a random flare-up.
Yes.
I definitely want to follow up with them and make sure they're okay, because that's probably indicative of some particular situation that's going on.
Oh, I see. Don't look at it as the jerk. Look at it as, there's something going on.
There's something wrong.
Can I help?
Yeah. Why is this person upset? Susan never behaves this way. Why is she this way? Is there something I can do? Can I check in with her? Somebody who loses their temper all the time, that's a pattern behavior. So I'm going to come up with a response to manage the pattern behavior. Doesn't mean I won't once in a while check in with them, because, they might not be aware. So I might say, gosh, that really seemed to set you off. Can you tell me why? But if they're continually losing their temper, then I'm going to treat it as I'll say, habitual behavior. And I'm going to try to apply measures to manage it. And if those measures don't work and they can't share with me why, we're going to sit down and have a more in-depth conversation about appropriate behavior at work. And, why are you doing this, and are you aware of the impact on others, and what can we do to stop it? Versus if somebody does it one time, I don't probably have to worry about it ever happening again. I just have to worry, are they okay?
All right, great. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate your time today, and I'm looking forward to coming back and seeing the result of the painting outside. Appreciate your time today.
Me too. Thank you.
And that was Margaret Meloni on how to control yourself when working with jerks. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. And if you like our podcast, why not forward it to your friends, co-workers, project management colleagues, or anyone else who might enjoy it. As always, you can find us on the web at thepmpodcast.com. If you are a project manager who wants to become a PMP, then our sister podcast at pmprepcast.com can help you get ready. And if you are a PMP and you are looking for PDUs and PM training from the brightest minds around, then stop by at pmlectures.com. Please send your emails to pmpodcast@gmail.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. It takes 43 muscles to frown, and it takes 17 muscles to smile. But it doesn't take a single muscle at all to express, my project has just gone over budget. Until next time.